example for cardinals and bishops who covered up McCarrick's abuses and resign along with all of them. But Vatican experts are skeptical of Vigano's claims, noting he is a known critic of Pope Francis. The Pope removed Vigano from his ambassadorship in 2016. Others believe this is an escalation of Vatican infighting between conservatives and liberals.
Of course, we must be very cautious because a war is in act in the Vatican today.
Pressure is mounting on Pope Francis following his trip to Ireland, the first papal visit in 40 years.
The actions of the Church do not match the words, and they are in fact totally the opposite.
Tonight, the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is calling for a thorough investigation into Vigano's claims. Shannon?
Brian Yanis, thank you very much. All right, Calvin is a 4-month-old lab puppy, newest member of the New York Gold Star family. When Master Sergeant Christopher Raguso was deployed to Iraq, he promised to bring home a puppy for his daughters. The sergeant was killed in action in March, but the promise was kept by a nonprofit called Paws of War. Wife and mother Carmela Raguso says we needed something genuinely happy. We salute Paws of War and Sergeant Raguso and his family. They are our midnight heroes. Most watched, most trusted, and most grateful you spent the evening with us. Good night from Washington. I'm Shannon Breen.
You're headed down the highway when the guy in front slams on his brakes out of nowhere. You do too, but not in time. Hey, no big deal. You got a good record, and Liberty Mutual won't hold a grudge by raising your rates over one mistake. You hear that, Karen? Liberty Mutual doesn't hold grudges. How mature of them.
For drivers with accident forgiveness, Liberty Mutual won't raise their rates because of their first accident. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Liberty, 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 liberty. Some believe if it's not German, it's not luxury performance. So we brought these Infiniti SUVs to Germany with American families to drive them.
This truck is only for German luxury auto, not for family or SUV.
VC Turbo. It's like 2 engines in one. How did Germany not do that first?
Keine Kinder auf der Strecke.
The Infiniti family of SUVs. There's nothing traditional about it.
Lease the Infiniti QX50 for $379 a month
at the Start Your Own Legacy summer sales event. Infiniti. Empower the drive.
Do you have any idea how your mattress affects your body and how well you sleep? Is it too hard or too soft, causing you to wake up with sore shoulders, back, or hips? Are you uncomfortable because you're too hot or too cold? Now you can get the total body support you need and the better sleep you want with the new MyPillow mattress topper.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. When I invented my new MyPillow mattress topper, I made it to have everything you'd ever want in a topper. My mattress topper helps give you the support you need, helps relieve your pressure points, and regulates your body temperature for you as an individual. It comes with a 10-year warranty. You can wash and dry the cover. It's made in the USA, and I back it with my 60-day money-back guarantee.
Go to MyPillow.com or call now to get your very own MyPillow mattress topper. Use the promo code and Mike will give you 30% off and 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free. Order now.
MyPillow topper delivers on its promise to give me a better night's sleep.
I can sleep all night through, and it's a miracle for me.
Mike's exclusive 3-layer design starts with a layer of MyPillow foam, providing you superior support and comfort. The second layer of transitional foam evenly distributes body weight and helps relieve uncomfortable pressure points for optimal comfort. Mike's ultra soft outer layer is a patented temperature-regulating cover that helps keep you at your ideal sleeping temperature all night long. Unlike other sleep systems costing thousands, the MyPillow mattress topper takes comfort to a whole new level without any wires, remotes, or moving parts. Call now or go to MyPillow.com to order your MyPillow topper. Use the promo code to save 30%. When you do, Mike will give you 2 of his standard MyPillows absolutely free. That's right, 2 standard MyPillows free and 30% off your MyPillow topper today. Order now.
I personally guarantee it's going to change your bed into the most comfortable bed you'll ever own.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
A hotel can make or break a trip. And at Expedia, we don't think you should be rushed into booking one. That's why we created Expedia's Add-on Advantage. Now after booking your flight, you unlock discounts on select hotels, right until the day you leave. Add-on Advantage. Discounted hotel rates when you add on to your trip. Only when you book with Expedia.
Tell her you'd marry her all over again. The Jewelry Exchange has stackable bands $99, half carat $299, Princess $590, 1 carat Marquise $790, and 2 carat Platinum $39.90. Thousands of bands guaranteed to appraise for double. The Jewelry Exchange.
As it happens, as news unfolds, follow it all live with the Fox News Update. No one brings it to you like Shepard Smith. Plus, Henry and Shimkus have all the latest.
Follow Fox News Update for exclusive content only on Facebook.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, August 28th, and this is Fox and Friends First, happening right now at 4 a.m. Bruce Orr is heading for the hot seat.
That's right. The demoted DOJ official will be questioned about his connection to the controversial Russian dossier.
We are live in Washington with everything you need to know before the fireworks erupt.
And it's all eyes on Arizona and Florida, where polls are set to open just hours from now.
The blockbuster races that are must-wins for Republicans in the critical battleground states.
Oh my
gosh! Oh, you gotta love it. The beautiful moment a soldier reunites with his best friends.
Fox and Friends First starts right now.
So no, honey, I'm good. I could have another, but I probably should not. I got somebody at home, and if I stay, I might not leave alone. No, honey, I'm good. I could have another, but I probably should not. I gotta bid you adieu to another.
I do know this song. It's by Andy Grammer.
Ah, I see that. I don't know that song. It's
What?
a new one.
Really?
Is it old? Is it new?
It's not new.
All right. Good morning. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Tuesday morning. I'm Rob Schmidt.
Wow, and I'm Jillian Mealy. We are in for Heather Childers. Thanks so much for starting your day with us. Demoted DOJ official Bruce Orr heading to the hot seat today. House lawmakers returning a week early to grill him behind closed doors over his connection to the infamous anti-Trump dossier.
Doug Luzader is live from Washington with more on the answers that Republicans are going to be looking for today. Hey, Doug.
Good morning. Yeah, this is going to be behind closed doors, but it may get explosive as Republicans try to delve into, let's say, some unusual relationships involving individuals within the Department of Justice. And at the heart of this is DOJ official Bruce Orr, who has been a subject for President Trump as well. Now, Orr's wife worked for Fusion GPS, which helped compile the now infamous Trump dossier. Orr also communicated a number of times with Christopher Steele, the ex-British spy who was the author of the dossier, and that's something this joint committee with both the House Judiciary Committee and the Oversight and Government Reform Committee will delve into.
We want him to confirm what we already know from hard evidence, that he and his wife were part of a conspiracy to, in fact, create this narrative of involvement and wrongdoing by the president relative to the Russians.
Now, Democrats have called this a conspiracy theory, but Republicans believe there is evidence of political bias within both the Department of Justice and the FBI, with individuals actively trying to protect Hillary Clinton during the email probe while trying to target Donald Trump. President Trump, for his part, has called Bruce Orr a disgrace. Rob and Jillian.
And we will have more on this coming up in the next 10 minutes or so. Stay tuned for that. Thank you, Doug.
And lawmakers are going to be honing in on the communications between Bruce Orr and Christopher Steele, particularly after the FBI severed its ties officially with the author of the dossier.
Byron York, columnist at the Washington Examiner, says those text messages and emails won't just impact the demoted DOJ official. They could do damage to the Obama Justice Department as well.
The whole idea is, what was the Obama administration doing with Christopher Steele, that former British spy who was hired by the Clinton campaign and the DNC to search for dirt in Russia on Donald Trump? What was the Justice Department doing about that? Steele was dying to get negative information about Trump into the press before the election, so it could affect the election. And he was not supposed to talk to the press, but he did. He did it in September and in October of 2016, right before the election. This is really, really against the rules for FBI sources, so they terminated him as a source. What they did in the months after the election, all the way up to at least May of 2017, was have Bruce Orr talk to Christopher Steele, then come back to the FBI and tell the FBI what Steele told him.
Now, Bruce Orr was demoted from the position of Associate Deputy Attorney General back in January.
The gunman who opened fire at a video game tournament was hospitalized twice for psychiatric treatment. His parents' divorce papers revealing David Katz was prescribed antipsychotic and antidepressant medication as early as 12 years old. Doctors say the 24-year-old struggled in college after enrolling in 2014, and there is no record of him graduating. This, as we learned, shooting victim Eli Clayton was playing in the tournament to earn money for college. The other victim, Taylor Robertson, was playing to support his family. Robertson leaves behind a wife and young son.
All right, Senator John McCain's final words to the American public revealed in a heartfelt letter that was read by his longtime aide.
I lived and died a proud American. We are citizens of the world's greatest republic. Americans never quit. We never surrender. We never hide from history. We make history. Farewell, fellow Americans. God bless you, and God bless America.
You can see how tough it was for him to just get through that. After bending to pressure and ordering the White House flag back down to half-staff, President Trump releasing a statement saying in part, quote, "I respect Senator John McCain's service to our country, and in his honor, have signed a proclamation to fly the flag of the United States at half-staff until the day of his internment." On the Senate floor, McCain's desk, draped in black and topped with white roses, as Senators Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer paid tribute to the maverick of the Senate.
President Trump celebrating a big trade victory after reaching a deal with Mexico to replace NAFTA.
Once signed, it'll be a major first step toward fulfilling a key campaign promise of renegotiating U.S. trade deals. John Roberts breaks down this new agreement.
It was another Oval Office first. President Trump with the president of Mexico on speakerphone to announce a new bilateral trade deal with our neighbor to the south.
They used to call it NAFTA. We're going to call it the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. We'll get rid of the name NAFTA. It has a bad connotation because the United States was hurt very badly by NAFTA for many years.
Outgoing Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto was as enthusiastic about the deal as President Trump was. He even said he'd like to give President Trump a big hug, though he acknowledged getting to an agreement was tough.
I am really grateful, Mr. President, and this has, of course, been a negotiation that has taken months. It's been difficult, complex, and a very hard negotiation altogether, with difficult moments, of course.
The biggest change in the trade relationship is rules of origin for cars. 75% of components used to build cars must be made in either Mexico or the U.S. 40 to 45% of auto content must be made by workers earning at least $16 an hour. The deal also increases trade in agricultural goods, keeping tariffs at zero. It all puts much more pressure on Canada to now make a deal. Canada was involved in three-way talks with Mexico and the U.S. before President Trump decided to do a one-on-one with Mexico first. The president is really putting the squeeze on Canada, warning that if the U.S. can't reach a new trade deal with our neighbor to the north, he is prepared to slap significant tariffs on Canadian-made automobiles destined for the United States. At the White House, John Roberts, Fox News.
Michael Cohen's lawyer is now backpedaling on claims he made about President Trump and Russian meddling. Lanny Davis admitting to being the anonymous source that told CNN his client knew that the president was aware of the infamous Trump Tower meeting with Donald Trump Jr., claims the president denied. Davis telling Fox News, quote, "I take the responsibility for not communicating more clearly my uncertainty. I regret the error." Cohen pleaded guilty to fraud charges just last week.
All right, a couple of key primaries today. On the march to the midterms in Florida, Trump-backed Congressman Ron DeSantis takes on Adam Putnam in the Republican primary for governor. The president also endorsing current Governor Rick Scott's Senate bid. Now, he's the GOP favorite to take on incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson in November. A three-way Republican race headlines the Arizona Senate primary to fill the retiring Jeff Flake's seat. And the Trump and President Trump supporting Arizona's incumbent governor, Doug Ducey, who is expected to win his primary today.
More on that later in the hour. The First Lady planting history at the White House with descendants of the past presidents, the granddaughter of President Eisenhower, and a fifth-generation grandson of President James Monroe planting a tree with Melania Trump on the South Lawn.
The sapling comes from the original Eisenhower oak that towers over an East Wing garden created by former First Lady Jackie Kennedy. It replaces a tree that fell during a storm. It was a hot day to be out there digging around in the garden.
They did a wonderful job.
Yes, they did. All right, 9 minutes after the hour, in just a few hours, Bruce Orr will likely be grilled behind closed doors after President Trump slammed his connection to the Trump-Russia dossier.
For him to be in the Justice Department and to be doing what he did, that is a disgrace.
Our next guest says there are two big questions that Bruce Orr needs to answer right now.
And once again, you're going to need more money the next time you head to the airport. The airline that just increased fees for checked bags. Oh, goody.
I'm young. I'm not supposed to have high blood pressure.
If you just learned you have high blood pressure, or you're already treating it with medication, you can benefit from adding the Zona Plus to your treatment plan.
Medication is not the answer all the time for treatment of blood pressure.
The Zona Plus therapy is safe and easy to do, at home or on the go. Do it while you're watching TV, during breakfast, relaxing, even before a workout.
Every once in a while I remind him, are you doing your Zona? And he'll say, yep.
Every day. In studies, 90% of people lowered their blood pressure from 10 to 15 points in as few as 4 to 8 weeks. And with the company's fantastic 90-day money-back guarantee, backed by a full refund of the purchase price, there's no risk. You have everything to gain by giving Zona Plus a try for 90 days. Call now at 800-311-6730 or visit us online at zonaplus.com.
The sheet reinvented, ridiculously soft. Chic's Performance Sheets, delivering the ultimate deep sleep experience.
As an elite athlete, the most important part to performance is a great night's sleep. We thought if technical fabrics can improve athletic performance, why can't we apply that same concept to sheets?
Chic stretches to your every curve. It conforms to you, and the softness is unbelievable.
Traditional cotton sheets trap heat and moisture, making you too hot or too cold. But Chic's groundbreaking sleep tech fabrics transfer heat 2 times more effectively and breathe nearly 50% better, allowing your body to stay at its ideal sleeping temperature. And Chic's moisture wicking technology releases the natural moisture your body creates while you sleep, so you stay dry and sleep better.
Moisture wicking is important because we get warm at night. You sweat a little bit every single night, and Chic's will help keep you cool.
Chic's are wrinkle-free and have stay-fit corners, which provide an extra secure fit and grip. Best of all, Chic's feel ridiculously soft.
If you think about that soft fabric touching your skin for 8 hours a night, you're gonna get a good night's sleep.
Every time you climb into bed, you'll experience the Chic sensation.
They're so much softer than any other sheet I've ever had.
The reviews have been remarkable. Chic's are transforming the quality of sleep.
Chic's feels so good, I don't want to get out of bed. I love Chic's.
Chic's are patented and the only authentic performance sheets. Call or go to trychic's.com now to sleep better every night. Order your Chic's performance sheet set in your choice of size and color. For a limited time, you'll get 25% off when you use the promo code on your screen. Plus, act now and get free shipping. Sleep on Chic's for 30 nights, and if you're not satisfied, we'll give you a full refund. There's no risk. Call or go online now for amazing savings on the most comfortable sheets you have ever slept on. Plus, free shipping, and see how Chic's delivers the ultimate deep sleep experience.
All right, Senior Justice Department official Bruce Orr is headed for a heated hearing on Capitol Hill after President Trump slams his, quote, disgraceful connection to the Steele dossier.
I think that Bruce Orr is a disgrace with his wife Nellie. For him to be in the Justice Department and to be doing what he did, that is a disgrace.
So what questions does Orr need to answer today? Here now to weigh in is commentary writer at the Washington Times, Philip Wegman. Thank you for joining us this morning. Philip, I know you say there are two big questions. What are they, and do you anticipate getting answers?
Well, first of all, there's an entire universe of things that you could ask this man, because in a lot of ways, he's the Forrest Gump of the Russia investigation. Think about it. He was at the Department of Justice during this, and he was involved somewhat in the Russia investigation. His wife, Nellie Orr, was at Fusion GPS, and he didn't properly disclose that he was financially benefiting from an active federal matter that, he was involved with. And then finally, he just so happens to be friends with Christopher Steele. So Republicans are going to be chomping at the bit, and there are going to be so many things that they have questions for, and it's going to be up to him to decide whether or not he wants to play ball or plead the fifth.
Okay, let's read a statement here from Mark Meadows, a Republican, who's been really looking into this quite a bit and making a lot of statements about it. Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie, worked for the firm hired by the Clinton campaign to write the dossier. Bruce Orr gave the dossier to the FBI. The FBI then used the same dossier to spy on the Trump campaign. When he comes to Congress tomorrow, Bruce Orr has some explaining to do. Now, Orr giving that dossier while he's working at the DOJ, giving that dossier to the FBI, did that move, that seems to be what everybody's focusing on, did that break some sort of a protocol? I mean, is there a punishment for that? What do you expect?
So already Orr has been demoted because Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, found out about some of the activities that he was engaged with without permission. I think what's going to be really interesting here that Orr is going to have to explain is, first, why was he even meeting with Christopher Steele after the FBI decided to end their relationship with him? And then the bigger question here that I think is going to lead to, more explanations that, former Obama officials are going to have to give is, Bruce Orr is going to be pressed on who at the FBI or who at the DOJ or who at the White House knew of his meetings with Christopher Steele and who approved them, or was he simply acting on his own? The goal here is going to be to pull the thread, not necessarily to just stop with Bruce Orr.
Well, right, but realistically, how many answers to these questions do you think we're going to get?
And that's the number one question here. Two things could happen. I'm cynical. I think that Bruce Orr is probably going to say one of two things. Either he's going to plead the fifth on his own, or he's going to do something really similar to what we saw Peter Strzok do in committee, which is kind of turn to the side, talk to his lawyer, and say, well, on the advice of my Department of Justice lawyer, I've decided not to answer that question.
Right. Real quick, I just want to get in that. You read the New York Times today, and they have what almost appears to be a sob story about Bruce Orr here, saying that his fellow colleagues always said he was a straight shooter, that this is all that he really didn't do anything wrong, and it's a piece in the New York Times. So I mean, it bears some reference to at least read and to think about. How do you answer that, I guess?
So what we've seen from the beginning of this entire Russia investigation is we've seen collusion conspiracy theories on the left, and we've seen deep state conspiracy theories on the right. The only thing that is going to restore, I think, confidence in our institutions is more transparency. And I know that this is a closed-door hearing today with Bruce Orr, but it's a step in the right direction. My hope is that this would move the administration, the Trump administration, to declassify a lot of the documents that Congress has already subpoenaed from the DOJ.
Which they can do at any time.
Time will tell. Philip Wegman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It is just about 18 minutes after the hour. Imagine this. Your child wins a toy at a county fair, and guess what's stuffed inside? A hidden camera. The disturbing discovery that every parent needs to pay attention to.
What? And stocks really moving up after President Trump announces a new trade deal with Mexico. So what will it mean for you at home? Our next guest says that the devil is in the details on this. We're going to explain.
With worsening weather patterns, an aging vulnerable power grid, and the growing risk of cyber terrorism, power outages are a part of life now. That can be stressful because we depend on power more than ever. When the power goes out, we lose everything. We can't even charge our smartphones. Now more than ever, you need a Generac automatic home standby generator. With prices starting at just $19.49, you can afford to always have the power you need. With Generac, power stays on in your house, even if you're not at home.
I know that when the power goes out, that Generac is going to kick on and I'm going to have power powering my whole house.
If it's out for 15 minutes or 4 days, we're going to be okay. We have control over what happens in our lives now.
Generac gives us that peace of mind because it is our power grid.
Call or go online to schedule your free in-home assessment. Generac has more than 5,000 dealers nationwide that will help you select a home standby generator that will meet your needs and fit within your budget. They'll discuss installation and provide you with a comprehensive estimate. It's a totally free consultation with no obligation to buy. Generac's automatic home standby generators start at just $19.49. Special financing is available with affordable monthly payments. Plus, with the Generac mobile link, you can check on your generator anytime from anywhere in the world. With the highest quality construction, exceptional dependability, and state-of-the-art technology, it's easy to see why Generac is the #1 brand of automatic home standby generators in the world. Call or go online to schedule your free in-home assessment. And if you act right now, you'll receive our 7-year extended limited warranty, a $695 value, absolutely free. Control your power and control your life with a Generac automatic home standby generator.
Attention oxygen therapy users. If you've been chained to an oxygen tank, then you know they're a burden. Tanks keep you from living the life you love.
I was on oxygen tanks and I couldn't go anywhere, do much of anything. I didn't dare go far.
It's time to reclaim your independence with an Inogen One oxygen concentrator. Inogen makes its own oxygen from the air around you, so you'll never worry about running out of oxygen again.
I wasn't going to run out of oxygen ever, and it was like freedom. I got my life back. I really love my Inogen.
The Inogen One G4 is lightweight and compact. Plus, it's battery operated, so you can have oxygen anytime, anywhere.
Oh, do I think Inogen is worth the money? You better believe it's worth every single penny of it.
Call now for your free information kit. There's no obligation. Inogen. Oxygen anytime, anywhere.
Call 1-800-513-5769. That's 1-800-513-5769. Call now for your free information kit.
Good morning and welcome back. From Lane to Miriam, another tropical storm zeroing in on Hawaii. Take a look. Forecasters predict the storm could strengthen to a hurricane in just hours. This as people begin to assess the damage left from Tropical Storm Lane. Torrential rains, flooding homes, and completely washing out roadways. The storm causing the most damage where rivers raged near Hilo. Nearly 40 people had to be rescued from homes. Lane now ranks as the second largest rainmaker from a cyclone in the U.S. since 1950. A plane packed with people drops in mid-air just after takeoff, leaving 150 passengers fearing for their lives. The Capital Airlines plane heading to eastern China suddenly losing pressure, causing oxygen masks to deploy. One passenger says during the scare he saw and smelled smoke in the cabin and thought to himself, quote, "I don't want to die." The plane reportedly had mechanical issues. Luckily, though, no one was hurt.
All right, the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 headlining another historic day on Wall Street after the president's agreement with Mexico to overhaul NAFTA, creating their own trade agreement, sending stocks surging. And it's more great news for Wall Street, but how will it impact your wallet, especially if you're not in the market? Joining me now is the Director of Trade Initiative at the National Taxpayers Union, Brian Riley. Brian, thanks for coming on this morning. It was a bit surreal to watch that news conference yesterday from the Oval Office. He's on the phone with the president of Mexico, and it was such a gush fest. They both were just so in love with each other. How are both sides winning on a trade agreement? How are they both so happy about this, I guess is my first question.
Well, it's really important to get this deal right, but clearly good trade agreements are agreements that benefit both countries. I think NAFTA has benefited the United States and Mexico and Canada, and just from the American standpoint, if you go to a grocery store today and look at all the fresh fruits and vegetables that you have from around the world, it'd be the middle of the winter, middle of the summer, and that's due not just to NAFTA, it's due to new technologies, but it's also due to the trade agreements that we have with countries around the world. So that's something that really benefits us, and whether it's trade agreements or Americans trading with other countries, those deals have got to be mutually beneficial, or they're just not going to work in the long run.
Yeah, so it appears we're not going to have many tariffs at all with Mexico, at least from this point forward. The market's, of course, responding. They love that. Everybody saw a little bit more money in the 401k yesterday. Let's talk about automobiles. That seemed to be one of the big parts of this agreement. It sounds like the president wants Mexican workers to get paid more, which should make, I guess, U.S. workers and labor unions here more competitive with them, because there's not this incentive for our auto parts to be made in Mexico, and also forces more of the auto parts to be made in the U.S. and Mexico together, which I guess would in some way cut China out of some of these deals and weaken them a bit. Is that right?
Right. Well, the challenge is with these trade agreements to reduce barriers and make it easier to do business in the United States. Since NAFTA took effect, for example, U.S. manufacturing output has gone up, U.S. automobile manufacturing output has gone up, and that's in part because of supply chains where we produce part of the cars in Canada, part in Mexico, part in the United States, and really the countries that prosper are the ones that can take advantage of getting the best parts, the best inputs from across the world, and we really need to move that direction in NAFTA. There's some concern that if we get too complicated and finicky with new regulations, so this much of a car's got to be made in the U.S. and it's got to have this much high-value labor, it can really get complicated and really make it harder to do business instead of easier. So that's one of those details that we really just need to take a close look at, and Congress needs to pay attention to.
And of course, we still have, you know, NAFTA used to include Canada. Now it's been changed to the United States and Mexico trade agreement. Canada needs to get back into this thing. I'm sure they're a bit nervous right now. What do you think?
Well, Canada needs to get back in. They're going to look at it and see, is this an agreement that still benefits the United States? And Congress is going to have to weigh in as well and look at the details and say, is this something that benefits the United States? I think the real win is if we follow what I think President Reagan's vision was for NAFTA in 1979 when he first proposed it. And that is, if you're an American, it should be easier to do business with people in Canada and Mexico. It should be, essentially, if you're living in Nebraska, it's easy to do business with somebody in Mexico as it is with somebody in North Dakota. And we've been moving in that direction. The question is, are we going to continue to move in that direction of more economic freedom or not? And that's why this deal is so important and so encouraging. And you saw that reflected in the markets yesterday.
Absolutely. And this is just the beginning. We still got to do the EU. We still got to do China at some point down the road, and Korea and everywhere else. So there's a lot more work to happen. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on. Brian Riley.
Thank you.
All right.
26 minutes after the hour, all eyes on Arizona and Florida, where polls are set to open just hours from now.
We're breaking down the key contests and what our next guest calls the most interesting race that has been flying under the radar.
If a dirty CPAP is making you sick, you're not alone. We invited CPAP users to come in and share their stories.
I started to wake up with a cough in the morning, and I wasn't sure why that was. And this began after I started with the CPAP machine. I didn't even think about the fact that there would be germs growing in this dark, warm, wet environment. But as a nurse, looking back, I should have been concerned. It wasn't too much later that I saw an ad for the So Clean CPAP sanitizer, and immediately I knew that was my solution.
So Clean is the world's first automated hands-free CPAP cleaner and sanitizer. It kills 99.9% of all CPAP germs and bacteria that can build up in your improperly cleaned CPAP.
Once I started using my So Clean machine, I can tell you that the sinus infections that I used to get from my CPAP are gone. It's like getting brand new equipment every day.
Even just a drop of water left in your CPAP mask or hose can create a breeding ground for germs and bacteria. With its patented design, So Clean is the only CPAP cleaner that safely, effectively, and effortlessly cleans your mask, hose, and reservoir so you can breathe easy.
The mask smelled sanitized and the air smelled sanitized, so it's a noticeable difference.
I don't worry about getting sick anymore. So Clean gives you great peace of mind that you have clean equipment. Feels great.
So Clean saves you the daily hassle of washing your CPAP by hand. Just place your mask into the machine, close the lid, and walk away.
The biggest issues I had with my CPAP machine were the inconvenience of cleaning the machine, taking it apart, making a mess. It was a chore. I know that the SoClean is going to take care of everything for me.
I don't have to push a button or anything. I just put the mask in the chamber, close the lid, and it runs automatically. SoClean has been a lifesaver.
SoClean works on all popular CPAP machines and masks. Try it risk-free for 30 days. Even shipping is free. Call 1-800-298-7210 to take advantage of this limited time offer.
If you get a CPAP machine, don't even take it home until you have your SoClean machine right with it, because they are a marriage made in heaven.
SoClean uses completely hands-free technology to kill 99.9% of all CPAP germs and bacteria in your mask, hose, and reservoir. Stay healthy, sleep easy, and free yourself from the hassle of cleaning your dirty CPAP on your own.
I rest easy knowing what I'm breathing all night long is clean, and I feel confident of that with SoClean.
Try SoClean at no risk to you for 30 days, and shipping is free. Call 1-800-298-7210 to take advantage of this limited time offer, or go to trysoclean.com. Call 1-800-298-7210 now.
Good morning to you and welcome back. A 9th child is confirmed dead as investigators look into whether fireworks or cigarettes caused a tragic house fire in Chicago. Police say there were no working smoke detectors in the home when it went up in flames early Sunday morning. They're now looking at remains of fireworks and smoking materials found on a porch as a family mourns the victims, ranging from 3 months to 16 years old.
I've lost several grandchildren. Marcos has lost several brothers and sisters. This is a tragedy beyond anything I ever dreamed of in my life.
This was Chicago's deadliest fire in over a decade. Untraceable 3D gun blueprints will stay offline for now. A federal judge in Seattle issuing a temporary restraining order against the controversial weapons until the case is resolved. 19 states and Washington, D.C. are suing the State Department after settling with the man who wants to publish them. The states argue that the guns could end up in the hands of convicts and terrorists.
The 9/11 trial in Guantanamo is moving so slow that it has outlasted the judge. Colonel James Pohl is retiring from the military after 38 years of service. He has presided over the terror case involving 5 prisoners accused of planning and aiding in the 9/11 attacks since 2012. The case is bogged down in pretrial hearings due to battles over what evidence can be used against these 5. Propane tanks burst into flames near the Statue of Liberty, forcing thousands to evacuate that island. The 3 100-pound tanks were sparked by a construction accident where a new museum is being built. People boarded ferries to get off the island back to Manhattan before the monument was reopened. 1 worker was hurt but is going to be okay. Well, tears and tributes. Senator Lindsey Graham opens up about the death of his longtime friend, Senator John McCain. The South Carolina Republican vowing to pay tribute to his mentor.
I wish we'd had more time, but it is what it is. They fought, and so we're going to look forward. We're going to give him the send-off he deserves. Yes. I have cried a lot, and I am going to try to get over it. And I'm going to speak tomorrow in the Senate. His death is right by mine, and I hope I don't crack up.
All right, McCain will lie in state at the U.S. Capitol Friday. A memorial service will be held at the National Cathedral in Washington Saturday before he is laid to rest at the U.S. Naval Academy on Sunday. Senator Graham will talk more about John McCain's legacy during the 7 o'clock Eastern hour of Fox and Friends. The Queen of Soul getting a royal farewell. Thousands expected to line up and pay their respects to Aretha Franklin today as her hometown of Detroit begins 4 days of memorials. Public viewings are today and tomorrow. A tribute concert will be held on Thursday. A private funeral is set for Friday. The church wants people to line up with pink Cadillacs before the funeral, a nod to her hit Freeway of Love. Franklin died of pancreatic cancer at the age of 76.
Several blockbuster primaries happening in Arizona and Florida. With which races should we be watching when the polls open? Here to break it all down is former Trump campaign pollster Jim McLaughlin. Thank you for joining us this morning. So if we start off here, you can see a number of states, specifically Arizona and Florida. That's where the interest lies today as far as what to watch anyway. So let's start off in Arizona GOP Senate primary, where you say Martha McSally is likely going to come out on top here, right?
Yep. Latest poll had Martha McSally up by 20 points, but a lot of folks, one of the interesting parts about this is the sad death of John McCain, is that her two opponents, Kelly Ward and Joe Arpaio, have actually been attacking John McCain and some of his policies before his death on things like immigration and whatnot, and on the Obamacare vote. But Martha McSally has the all-important Donald Trump endorsement in that one.
And as we know, that Donald Trump endorsement does mean a lot. Ron DeSantis, as we saw in Florida's GOP gubernatorial primary, has that as well.
Yep. Early on, Adam Putnam was the quote-unquote establishment favorite. He raised a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars. He's outspent Ron DeSantis by about 2-1. But then about a month ago, Donald Trump came in, he campaigned for Ron DeSantis, and now all the polls are showing Ron DeSantis ahead in that one.
Wow, that President Trump endorsement certainly can do a lot, can't it?
No question.
The likely Florida Senate race here, Rick Scott.
Yep. And now, not a lot going on here from the primary. Both Rick Scott and incumbent Democrat Senator Bill Nelson are going to win. But the truth of the matter is, this could decide what happens in the Senate. The Republicans are really excited about the campaign of Rick Scott. He's actually been very energetic. He's run a great campaign. And there was an interesting article yesterday in Politico about how a lot of Democrats aren't happy with the type of campaign that Bill Nelson is running.
What does it say that Bill Nelson has spent roughly $6 million, I believe it is, and Rick Scott spent about $27 million?
Yeah, but the truth of the matter is, I don't think money is going to decide this race. And I'll tell you why. Because the Democrats and Chuck Schumer and the liberal special interest groups, they've already reserved about $50 million in airtime. It's not going to be about money. I really think this will be about issues, and it's Florida.
Yeah.
General elections are always close in Florida.
And a lot of people in Florida have already voted.
Yep, no question about it. In the primary, by the way, about 2 million people have already voted with early voting that's going on. More than half. Some people are saying it'll be as much as 60% will actually vote before today when they have the actual primary.
Let's head to Florida District 27 GOP primary. What do you see happening here?
Yep. Now, this is a race where the Democrats were basically chalking up as a victory. Ileana Ross-Layton, very famous Republican congresswoman, is retiring. But the truth of the matter is, the Republicans have a great candidate, Marivita Salazar. She's a very prominent. She grew up in the district. She's a former television reporter and news anchor. They're really excited about her. Now, the Democrats, they thought it was going to be a walk, to be quite honest with you, for Donna Shalala on their side. But the truth of the matter is, the Republicans are really excited about the campaign that Marivita Salazar is running.
We will certainly watch that and see what happens. And then, as you mentioned here, some of the Democrats.
Yep. And Donna Shalala, former HHS secretary for Bill Clinton. People thought it was going to be, she was going to win easily. But the truth of the matter is, what happened is the Democrats, there's been another Democrat in that, has spent over $2 million in that. So it's been a very spirited Democratic primary. It's going to be really interesting what happens in that general election.
And Oklahoma, the runoff, you said.
Yep. There's an Oklahoma runoff today. It's not going to be nearly as exciting as Florida and Arizona. And again, Florida and Arizona, they're going to have a lot to do with, depending upon what happens in these primaries, who controls the Senate come November.
But Oklahoma, we still love you. Thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate your time. It is 37 minutes after the hour. A food stamp showdown brewing. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle set to go head-to-head in what's teeing up to be an all-out brawl over a welfare bill. What's at stake for taxpayers?
Is everybody out? I got people inside that are trapped. Hey, come on, man. The house is on fire.
Did you see this? He ran into the flames to save a family. Well, now the heroic cop seen in this heart-stopping video joins us live next to describe the dramatic moments inside the rescue. Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss it.
Update your floors with Empire Today's $50 room sale. Buy one room, get floors for all other rooms for just $50 each. So when you buy one room, it's only $50 for laminate in the kitchen, $50 for carpet in the bedroom, and $50 for hardwood in the office. There's no limit. Buy one room and it's $50 for floors in each additional room. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today.
Imagine never worrying about flying insects in your house again. No more annoying flies. No more ugly sticky strips that are a hassle to use. No more nasty pesticide sprays. Introducing the Dynatrap Flylight, the smart and easy way to protect your entire home with the most advanced flying insect control technology available. Looking like a decorative nightlight, Dynatrap's exclusive Attract-to-Glow technology creates a genetic response flying insects can't resist, while safely and effectively attracting and eliminating those annoying flying insects. Flies and other flying insects can carry around harmful bacteria and diseases that can spread upon contact. The Dynatrap Flylight disposes of them while enhancing the surroundings with its gentle glow and stylish design. The Dynatrap Flylight contains no harmful chemicals, is easy to use, and starts working the minute you plug it in.
Look at that.
Starting at $19.95, the Dynatrap Flylight protects your home from unwanted insect invaders. Call now or log on to trydynatrap.com. Risk-free for 30 days.
It was so easy to set up, and we started noticing a difference immediately.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's quiet and safe for a family to be around. Plus, who knows what kind of diseases and junk those flies and insects are carrying.
And it looks great, too.
The Dynatrap Flylight is the real deal.
Protect every room in your home from mosquitoes, flies, moths, no-see-ums, fruit flies, yellow jackets, and more with the Dynatrap Flylight. Call now or log on to trydynatrap.com and learn how you can try the Dynatrap Flylight in your home risk-free for 30 days. If you're not amazed at how well the Dynatrap Flylight works in your home, return it for a full refund of the purchase price. Enter the promo code on your screen now and we'll even include 3 bonus sticky tack cards. This offer is not available in stores, so call or log on now.
For drug-free sinus relief, experience Navage, the next big thing in nasal care. Navage is the only nose cleaner with powered suction to pull refreshing saline rinse in one nostril and out the other. Navage relieves congestion from allergies and colds naturally by flushing out allergens, mucus, dust, and germs.
I used to get so congested, but Navage cleans out all the stuff that makes me miserable so I can breathe again.
Now at CVS and Navage.com, you'll love that clean nose feeling.
Welcome back. A major showdown in Congress could be looming over a work requirement for food stamps.
William Lajeunesse explains how our improving economy is putting the squeeze on welfare recipients and lawmakers.
We've created almost 4 million new jobs since the election, with entire industries begging for workers.
Right now, all of agriculture is facing a labor shortage.
The Trump administration wants Americans on welfare back on the job.
Statistics show more jobs available than we have people to fill them.
Which is why critics accuse the administration of hypocrisy. While the president says he wants able-bodied adults to work for food stamps, that's not what the Department of Agriculture is doing. Waiving work requirements in 33 states.
This program has been on autopilot for years, and it needs to stop. And that's why you need to see the president and the secretary step in, put on the brakes.
Today we are ending welfare as we know it. President Clinton made welfare workfare in 1996. But when unemployment hit 12% in 2009, President Obama approved a nationwide waiver and a loophole, allowing states to keep food stamps for adults, even though now the recession is over. Unemployment, the blue line, is at a record low. Food stamp enrollment remains, however, stubbornly high. California has 500,000 job openings and more than 800,000 food stamp recipients eligible to fill them. Yet last month the state renewed its waiver.
I've inquired several times of how we could deny these waivers, but we are statutorily precluded from denying the waivers if they fit the criteria.
And that's what the Farm Bill stalemate is all about. The House bill gives the USDA veto authority over state waivers. The Senate bill does not. While Senate Democrats say they will not approve any bill requiring recipients to work, negotiations with the House continue. In Los Angeles, William Lajeunesse, Fox News.
California's tough gun laws are about to get even tougher. Lawmakers approving 3 bills with new restrictions on who can own a gun. The proposals include lifetime bans for anyone convicted of domestic violence and people admitted to a mental health facility twice in 1 year. To get a concealed carry permit, you'll need to take an 8-hour class and pass a live fire test. The bills are headed to Governor Jerry Brown's desk for approval.
Twitter does an about-face after claiming that a user who wished death on the NRA spokeswoman's children did not break the rules. In an email to Dana Lash's husband, the company says, quote, "We have re-reviewed the account you reported and have locked it because we found it to be in violation of the Twitter rules." Dana Lash will join Fox and Friends to discuss the reverse ruling in the 8 o'clock Eastern hour.
A dramatic rescue caught on camera as a police officer runs directly into a burning home to save a family with 6 children.
Is everybody out? Where are they at? They're inside? I got people inside that are trapped. Hey, come on, man. The house is on fire. Come on. Get out.
You can hear him there. That hero officer had no fire experience whatsoever, yet he ran in toward the flames anyway. And this morning, he joins us live to relive those heart-stopping moments. Good morning to you, Seagoville, Texas police officer Sam Glick. Sir, thanks so much for coming on today. What a story. I know you guys usually just say this is just another day on the job, but for most of us, we saw that video and we heard the story and we were just so impressed. Kind of take us back and tell us what exactly happened.
I was on patrol earlier that night and just happened to drive by the residence and saw that it was fully engulfed. I immediately alerted my dispatchers, let them know what was going on and to send fire personnel. I got out. I heard screaming from a lady that was in the neighborhood that was running towards the house as well. She told me that there was people that were trapped inside. I saw the fire. I knew that we didn't have much time and immediately took action trying to get them out of the house. It just got really hot really fast. The fire started spreading and we myself and one of the neighbors, he led me around to the back of the house. Actually was able to bust out one of the windows and gain access to inside the home.
Officer Glick, in most neighborhoods, the fire department is just a couple minutes away. Why didn't you want to wait?
I felt like we didn't have a couple of minutes. By the size of the fire and the size of how quickly it was moving, I just felt like we didn't have a couple of minutes. It wasn't an option to sit there and continue to watch the house burn with people inside of it. We definitely had to get some help and get them to safety.
Sir, why did you want to become a police officer? Was this the motivation so that you could have a chance to do things like this?
Absolutely. I believe that I want to make a difference. I want to make a difference in the community. I want to be I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to go to work and make a difference every day that you come into work for your shift. I think that's very important. I believe that all officers are striving to do something positive every day.
This was a family with 6 kids inside, and when you're on the outside looking in, before you make that decision to go inside, you don't know what you're faced with. You don't know what the structure of the building, the integrity of the building is like at that point. You don't know how many people are in there to save. So as you're realizing how many kids there are, what's going through your mind?
What's going to be the quickest, safest way for everybody to get in and to get out? All I wanted to do was get those kids to safety. All I wanted to do was make sure that everybody was safe and not injured and get as far away from the house as possible.
That is something else. What a story. It really is just a tremendous story. And we're so happy that you were able to get up early today and come on and let us put you on TV for this, because you certainly deserve some recognition.
And real quick, have you talked to them since?
Thank you. I have. I actually went by their home Sunday and spoke to the father and the one of the neighbors that was also out there. I met some of the kids, not all of them, and it was really an incredible moment.
I'm sure. You're their hero. All of ours. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Seagoville, Texas. Officer Sam Click. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
48 minutes after the hour. Is your favorite toy store coming back? I wonder if some people thought we were talking about Toys R Us. Nope. Yeah. FAO Schwartz is reopening in New York City and needs people to dance on the big piano
I want to do
like Tom Hanks. How you can get a starring role.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh my gosh! Hi,
Oh, I love it. The incredible moment a soldier returns home to surprise his dog. I promise it'll make your morning.
Everybody loves the Bowflex Max Trainer. Just listen to what these real people are saying.
The Max Trainer is unlike any other piece of equipment I've ever tried. It's a great full body workout.
You're really torching those calories. Press the button, 14 minutes, and you're done. It used to take me a full hour to get the workout I'm getting in 14 minutes on Max Trainer. I lost 15 pounds.